On the edge of a dense, mist-covered forest, a crumbling mansion loomed, hidden away from the eyes of the living. No one dared to venture near it after sundown, for whispers of an ancient vampire residing within its walls kept the villagers of Ferndale gripped with fear. Elias von Dralen, the vampire lord, had haunted these lands for centuries. He was known to appear as a shadow in the dark, with piercing eyes that glowed like dying embers. Stories told of his cruelty, his insatiable thirst, and his deadly charm. Yet, what the villagers didn't know was that Elias was searching for something or someone. Deep within the mansion, Elias held a tattered journal, its leather cover worn from countless nights of study. It was the last remnant of his mortal life, a life he barely remembered but could never truly leave behind. The pages spoke of a hidden ritual, an ancient rite that could finally put an end to his endless existence, or grant him something far darker, a power no vampire had ever held. Driven by a growing desperation, he delved into forbidden magic. Strange symbols lined the floors of his study, candles flickered in unnatural colors, casting ghastly shadows on the walls. The mansion itself seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, as if alive. But the ritual was incomplete. He needed one final element to heart untouched by fear, one capable of withstanding his darkness. It was not a task he could accomplish alone. Elias waited, each night scanning the forest, until one moonless evening, a figure appeared, a young woman, cloaked and unafraid, stepping silently through the fog. The ritual could be completed, but it demanded a sacrifice neither of them were prepared to make. As Elias and the young woman locked eyes, the air around them seemed to chill. The last piece of the puzzle had arrived, yet an unspeakable bond began to form between them. Shadows danced with a sinister allure, as though the mansion itself anticipated the looming choice. And so, the ancient vampire and his final chance at freedom stood in the darkness, each carrying a secret, each facing a choice that could change the fate of their world. Elias studied the young woman, his crimson gaze piercing through the night. She returned his stare without a hint of fear, her dark eyes reflecting the eerie glow of the mansion's candles. Her expression held an unsettling calm, as if she had known him all her life. "Why have you come here?" he asked, his voice a soft echo in the heavy silence. The woman's lips curved into a slight smile. "I've come to offer my heart, Lord Dralen." Elias's grip tightened on the tattered journal. Few knew his name. Fewer still dared to speak it. "Who are you?" he demanded, his tone laced with suspicion. "My name is Aislinn," she replied. "My family has been bound to you for centuries." She stepped forward, lifting her hand to reveal a mark etched into her skin, a dark sigil identical to the one carved into the cover of his journal. Elias's mind raced. Memories of past lives, of faces lost to time, resurfaced in a dizzying swirl. The mark she bore was an ancient seal, a binding contract between her bloodline and his, but no descendant had dared honor it in over 3 centuries. "Do you know what you're offering?" he asked, his voice unsteady. Aislinn's gaze never wavered. "I know my heart could end your curse, or perhaps unleash a darkness neither of us can fathom." Elias felt the surge of dark energy around them intensify. The mansion walls seemed to shiver, groaning as if eager for blood, for the ritual to begin. Yet a gnawing doubt crept into his thoughts. He knew well the risks, knew that he was gambling with a force beyond even his understanding. But the promise of release from his cursed eternity called to him like a siren song. He reached out, brushing his icy fingers against her marked hand. The air around them crackled, and he felt a strange warmth, a warmth he hadn't known in centuries. But as their hands touched, something else awakened, a pulse, dark and sentient, stirring deep within the mansion's walls. "Aislinn," he murmured, pulling his hand away. "There's something here, something older than both of us. If we proceed, neither of us may survive what follows." Aislinn's eyes darkened, her smile fading. "I know, but my family has lived in the shadow of your curse. If there's a chance to end it, I'm willing to face whatever comes." Elias knew then that the ritual would not only bind them but awaken an ancient darkness, buried within the mansion. This force had lain dormant, waiting for the ritual to be performed, a force that craved freedom. With a grim resolve, Elias and Aislinn began the ritual, each word of the incantation stirring the shadows around them into a frenzy. The mansion itself seemed to breathe, the walls whispering in a forgotten tongue. As the final word fell from Aislin's lips, a fierce wind surged through the mansion, extinguishing every candle. Darkness enveloped them, and Elias felt a presence, something vast and malevolent, unfurling from the shadows. A chill ran down his spine as a voice, low and thunderous, echoed through the room. You have awakened me, and now, you are both bound to me. The shadows seemed to shift, taking form a spectral figure, its eyes glowing with a dark fire. Standing between them, Elias realized too late that they hadn't merely been performing a ritual to end his curse. They had opened a door to a power far beyond his control, and whatever they had unleashed was hungry. As the figure advanced, Elias and Aislinn exchanged a look of horror and a promise. They had no choice now but to face what lay beyond, together, against the darkness that would either consume them or release them. The entity loomed over them, its form shifting like smoke. Its eyes bore into Elias and Aislinn, blazing with an ancient fury that seemed to pierce the very fabric of their souls. The air grew thick, suffocating, as the weight of the darkness threatened to crush them both. Elias gritted his teeth, trying to summon the strength that had sustained him through centuries of torment. But this creature was different. It had not been bound by mortal constraints nor the limits of time. It was a being from a realm beyond his understanding, older than his curse, older than the very mansion that held them. You've spent your life running from the darkness, Elias, the entity whispered, its voice like 1,000 voices speaking in unison. Now, you will face it. Aislinn, though visibly shaken, stepped forward. We did not call you here to surrender ourselves to you. We called you to end a curse. The entity's laugh was low and mocking, echoing in the empty hall. The curse cannot end. It can only transform. Elias felt a shiver of dread. He had expected a release of freedom from the chains of his undead existence. But now he saw the truth. The ritual had been twisted, manipulated by the being that now held them captive. What do you want? Elias forced himself to ask, his voice cold but tinged with desperation. The entity's eyes narrowed, a heart as bold as hers, and a life as cursed as yours. It tilted its head toward Aislinn. The sacrifice you seek is real, but it is not yours to take. It is mine. Aislinn glanced at Elias, determination hardening her features. I didn't come here to be taken, she said, her voice steady. If you want my heart, you'll have to fight for it. The entity's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile. Oh, my dear, I am beyond fighting, but I can make a deal. It extended a shadowy hand toward her, and a faint light flickered in its palm, a tiny, pulsating orb, glowing with a dark energy. Take this, and you will share in his curse. You will walk the shadows, bound to Elias for eternity, and the curse will pass between you both, a legacy to bind you beyond death itself. Elias's heart twisted. The very thought of Aislinn sharing his fate, a fate of endless night, of hunger, of isolation, filled him with a grief he hadn't known he could feel. No, he said, reaching for her hand. There must be another way. But Aislinn, resolute, met his gaze. We came here for a chance to end this, Elias. If we turn back now, your curse will haunt you and my family forever. Slowly, she reached out, fingers trembling, and took the orb from the entity's hand. The moment she touched it, the light flared, searing through her body and binding her spirit to the shadows around them. Her eyes glowed with a strange darkness, the mark on her hand now pulsing with the same light that flickered from the orb. The entity laughed once more. So it begins. You are now bound to cursed souls, sharing one destiny. But beware, the power I have given you comes at a price. What price? Elias demanded, watching as Aislinn struggled, her form flickering like a candle in the wind. Your love, your trust, your very souls, it replied, its eyes glinting with cruel amusement. This curse will pull you closer, yet drive you apart. You will never know if your hearts are true, or if they're bound by this darkness I've placed within you. The entity faded, leaving Elias and Aislinn alone in the cold, empty mansion, their fate sealed. They looked at each other, unsure of what they had unleashed or what they had now become. As dawn broke, Elias felt the curse shift within him, as though part of it now belonged to her. He reached for her hand, and together, they walked into the light of morning, bound by a darkness that neither of them could escape or fully understand. And in the silence, a voice whispered, I will be watching. Days passed, then weeks, and Elias and Aislinn wandered the shadowed halls of the mansion, bound together by the darkness that now ran through both of them. At first, they shared a desperate hope that the bond between them could somehow be broken. They searched every hidden corner of the mansion, combed through ancient texts, and tried every charm, every spell Elias had once believed in. But with each failed attempt, their hope faded, giving way to the suffocating reality that their fates were sealed. The curse began to weigh heavily on Aislinn, whose mortal soul was not meant to bear the endless hunger of the undead. She grew pale, her energy waning as if her life was slowly draining away. Her once bright, determined eyes grew hollow, haunted by visions Elias had never wanted her to see. She started to hear whispers in the mansion's walls, ghostly voices taunting her, luring her further into the darkness that had claimed her. One night, as a storm raged outside, Aislinn awoke, gasping, and found Elias watching her with a look of anguish. In his eyes, she saw her own pain mirrored a bond of suffering they had never wanted. "How much longer can we go on like this?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Elias reached out, brushing a cold hand over her cheek. "I would end it if I could. I never wanted this for you, Aislinn." A small, sad smile touched her lips. "I thought I could bear it. I thought love could. Fight the curse, change it, make it worth living with. But it feels like it's consuming me, Elias. Like there's no end to the hunger, the shadows." He closed his eyes, knowing her words were true. He felt it too. The bond between them had brought them close, only to push them into a darker abyss. Each day eroding the warmth they once shared, twisting it into something unrecognizable. What had started as love had become something else, something neither of them could fight. As dawn approached, Aislinn looked at him, her eyes filled with a resigned sorrow. "There's only one way out for me," she said softly. "You must release me." Elias recoiled, his heart breaking. "No, I cannot. I would be alone, cursed again, cursed forever. And you would be gone." Tears glistened in her eyes as she took his hand. "If you love me, you'll let me go. This curse, it has already taken so much from us. Please, Elias, don't let it take my soul." With a shattered heart, Elias understood. To keep her bound to him would be the ultimate cruelty, condemning her to the same endless nightmare he had lived for centuries. Gently, he wrapped his arms around her, feeling her warmth for the last time. "I will let you go, Aislinn. I promise. I will release you." In the silent dawn, Elias whispered the ancient words, his voice breaking as he spoke the final line. Aislinn's form shimmered, fading like mist in the morning light. Her last gaze lingered on him, filled with a love that would outlast even the curse itself, then dissolved into nothingness. Elias fell to his knees, the emptiness around him a painful echo of the emptiness inside him. Aislinn was gone, her spirit finally free, but he was alone once more, his curse now heavier than ever. In the desolate silence, he felt the dark presence return, a faint whisper in the shadows. "You are mine now, Elias," it murmured, "forever alone, forever bound." And as the mansion walls closed in around him, Elias realized that his final curse had begun a fate darker than death, darker than any nightmare. A life without Aislinn, a love lost to shadows, and an eternity to remember what he could never have again.